Good afternoon, my name is Giovanni Sanchez-Hernandez, and this is my first presentation for this course. My presentation today will be specifically on how the NSA collects data and how it uses it for our safety, and whether or not I agree with what they are doing. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Here we have the mission statement, but for those who don't know what the NSA is, it stands for the National Security Agency. So let me go ahead and read the mission statement for you. The National Security Agency leads the U.S. government in cryptology and encompasses both signal, intelligence insight, and cybersecurity products and services, and enables computer network operations to gain decisive advantage for the nation and our allies. In other words, the sole purpose of the NSA is to gather information from different sources, whether it be phone calls, social media activity, or email exchange, in order to keep the U.S. and our allies safe. In past years, the NSA has been accused of going too far, and allegations of the NSA abusing its power to gather the data has risen over the past couple of years as well. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And the next slide, I have three important dates which are important in the history of the NSA. So let's start off with 1949. On this year, the Army and the Navy cryptology agencies were combined into the Armed Forces Security Agency. And this was the predecessor of the NSA. And these two agencies provided valuable information during the war of World War I and World War II. And later on in 1952, the president at the time, who was Henry Truman, officially established the NSA as a federal agency. But it was kept under wraps until 1975, when it was publicly announced that the NSA was a federal agency that was kept a secret, just to ensure that the agency would continue to flourish, and to ensure that its enemies, or our enemies, wouldn't know that we were spying on both our citizens and their citizens as well. And their citizens specifically who were considered to be high risk or a threat to the US and or a threat to its allies. So, what kind of data is collected? So according to the NSA, it collects a bunch of phone records of individuals who may be deemed as high risk for the US and its allies, and also other kinds of data like social media activity, and also email exchange, so on and so forth. A bunch of different type of data that is collected. And here I have an example of what kind of phone records are kept. So for example, we have the first hop, which is labeled as phone A, phone B, and phone C. So phone A would be the person who is considered to be high risk for the US, and phone B and C would be the individuals who contact or have a conversation with the person on phone A, who is considered to be a high risk. The NSA has the right to record and collect data from those conversations. And then we go to the second hop, which is labeled as phone D, E, F, and G. And those individuals are third-party members who contact people who had contacted or spoken to people who were on the phone A, who were considered to be high risk. So the NSA has the right to record and collect data from individuals who contact someone who is considered to be high risk, and in return also has the right to collect data from those who contacted people who had recent contact with someone who was considered to be high risk. Therefore, it is collecting a lot of information. Which brings me to the next slide of how much data and why. It is collecting thousands and thousands of phone records on a daily basis. And the reason for this is to gather information that it can use, um, and also for securing, making sure that the U.S. is secure as well as its allies, and make sure that there is no threat for the U.S. So next is what they are doing considered to be ethical? Personally, I believe that what they're doing is unethical because it's breaking a couple rules of ethics. But it brings me to the next slide of whether or not I agree with what they're doing. And I will say that although I consider their actions to be unethical, I do agree with what they are doing and do support what they are doing, and truly believe that the reason for which they should continue doing the collection of data is to protect the US and its citizens. And because of this, I believe um, they should continue and be allowed to continue to collect this type of data that is considered to be important and of the essence for the US and its allies. So with that, I do conclude my presentation. This presentation is a little bit shorter, which is why I don't have much information. But if I do get a chance later on in the future to do another presentation, I would gladly go more in depth as to um, the different kinds of data that is collected. Um, we just scratched the surface in this presentation, but with that, I do conclude my presentation. Thank you. And the next slide is the reference page.